why is this mentioned in this order? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ? Why doesn't he say إِلَّا الَّذِينَ عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَآمَنُوا? Or why is it وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ? Why is it not وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ? This is something that we must think about in order to get the secret behind the order of the 4 key points that save us from being a loser. Surah Al-Asr is a key surah in understanding the concept of sabr. In this small surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by the time humans are in a constant state of loss. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an exception to the rule. And he says, if you don't want to be a loser, then do these 4 things all together. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and perform good deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and they recommend each other for haqq, for the truth, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and they recommend each other for sabr and patience. Now, a question you might ask yourself is, why is this mentioned in this order? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ? Why doesn't he say إِلَّا الَّذِينَ عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَآمَنُوا? Or why is it وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ? Why is it not وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ? This is something that we must think about in order to get the secret behind the order of the 4 key points that save us from being a loser. Let's talk about this. So what is Iman? Iman is a state of our hearts in which we believe in the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way He has introduced it to us. And we can think of 2 kind of situations. One in which we would claim that we have Iman while our hearts would be empty of Iman. This is called nifaq. This is hypocrisy. And the other situation is that we would claim that we have Iman while our hearts are also filled with Iman. This is Iman. It's a state of our hearts which no one can tell except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it's according to how we claim or if it's not according to how we claim. So, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Now that we have claimed Iman with our tongues, it's time for us to show it with our actions. And you see a very logical sequence that first you claim Iman, and now to prove that you have to show it with amal salih. So you perform good deeds. And therefore we have إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So far we claimed that we have Iman with our tongues, and we also performed certain acts which are called amal salih, by which we proved that there is Iman in our hearts. But is this enough? Because we're living in a society, there are so many people living around us. What is our responsibility towards them? Is there anything that we're supposed to do religiously in order to interact with them? Or are we just responsible for ourselves and it doesn't matter what's happening in our surrounding? The verse of Surah Al-Asr tells us that, no, you are responsible. Because إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا, and they recommend each other بِالْحَقِّ, about haqq. This can be done in so many different ways. If there is a certain oppression going on, they tell each other that, look, you have to accept that this is a dhulm. If there is something wrong that's happening in society, they tell each other that, look, this is not haqq. You have to stick with haqq. Anything that is an example for haqq, these individuals who have believed, had Iman, and done amal salih, now it's time for them to interact with each other and recommend each other about haqq. So this is an active society in which people are not responsible for their individual acts, but they're also responsible for what's happening in society. Okay? So we see a logical sequence between Iman, amal salih, and tawasi bil haqq. And then the last and the most important point that comes is وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. By now you're probably getting to this conclusion yourself, that if you have Iman in your hearts and you do amal salih, you do good deeds, and then you also show concern about your brothers and sisters in your surrounding, in your society, and you do tawasi bil haqq wa tawasaw bil haqq, you recommend each other about haqq, then what's going to happen is you are causing a big trouble to the system of shaitan, about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that he is our biggest enemy. And what's going to happen is it's going to be a state of war between our enemy, who is shaitan, who wants to stop us from doing all these things and be in a constant loss, and us. So we're having a war with shaitan. So there's going to be trouble. There's going to be problems. There's going to be situations that are not going to be comfortable. We're not going to like it. And therefore, we're recommended to do sabr. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So you're going to tell each other that, look, have patience. Now that you have taken steps in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to be challenged by shaitan. It's time for you to have patience and not complain. So the relevance of patience is not before having iman or before doing amal salih, the good deeds. Because if you're having patience before performing any good deeds, that means you're not doing the good deeds, right? The relevance of patience comes after you do good deeds, and then you show yourself responsible for your society, and now you have challenged the system of shaitan to the max. And now shaitan is going to do its best to show you resistance and take you away from the right path. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help you, but you're not supposed to complain. You're supposed to wait until this temporary life finishes and you reach to the world which is eternal, and you get your highest reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything you did in this world. And this is how you're not going to be a loser, because those who don't do these things, what happens to them is that they're just losing their life, and they're not going to be getting anything in the hereafter. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. جزاكم الله خير.